Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. I'd like to say that I'm speaking as a manufacturer, someone who started a company that's provided over 1,000 jobs and kept those manufacturing jobs in the Midwest. And for decades, we have competed against cloned Chinese products, and we've become increasingly dependent on Chinese components for our supply chain. And that's the commercial reality. I'd also like to echo Mr. Eshu's comments that we should be thinking in terms of reducing, if not the defensive perimeter, but at least the stronghold from the G20 to the G7. The free democracies of the world are the group of countries through which we should have free, absolutely free markets, as free as our politics allow. And then the G20 will be a more contested area. But we have to make common cause with the G7. And I'd also like to say it's not just the G7. When you say G7, please include Korea. Korea's economy is larger than Russia, all right? It is the Koreans, not the Taiwanese, that lead the world in leading-edge semiconductor production. Samsung, not TSMC, is in production at the 3-nanometer design node. So what I'd like to focus my questions on are really one of demographic trends. I'm sure many of you, not all of you, may remember the essay, the Japan That Can Say No. And this was, and then I guess the subtitle was Why Japan Will Be First Among Equals. It was published in 1989 and got a lot of attention. It made the point that Japan had taken over semiconductor supply chain. They led the world in semiconductors. Japan was on the same sort of exponential economic growth curve that China has been on for the last decade or more. And there was a lot of hand-wringing over Japanese threats of intellectual property. And so what happened? Well, first off, Japan, like China, just suffered a massive real estate bust that limited their ability to continue to invest in leading-edge technologies, and as a result, they lost the lead in semiconductors. They also faced an aging society, which is really, demographics is destiny, and we have to understand that. And they also lost the wage competition. Japan lost the wage competition with other low-cost providers, exactly what China is going through now and will be going through for the next decade. And we have to have that clearly in mind. I'm most worried that China is going to misbehave because it will have the behavior of a pressed rat rather than the behavior of a conquering hero. They are in deep trouble because of the collapse of their real estate bubble, which dwarfs the Japanese real estate collapse. Their regional governments are basically insolvent because the gravy train from developers, paying. It's a long story, but the regional governments are basically bankrupt, and the central government's unwilling to bail them out. And the demographic projections are really daunting. The estimates are that sometime between 2060 and the end of the century, 2060 and the end of the century, China's population will be half what it is today. There is never going to be this giant $1.4 billion prosperous middle class in China. Their educational levels do not support it. Their forays into chip production have collapsed in a blaze of corruption, all right? And they're just a complete failure. And the companies see this too, that there isn't going to be this massive middle-class market in China, and they started to pull out. The Korean companies tried pulling out starting several years ago, and are finding what other companies find, that it's pretty much impossible to get your money back out of China. That when they built a shipyard or a port, and they want to get their money back out from that investment, pretty much they have to just turn over the keys and walk away. And so and that's not a unique experience. And so that the attractiveness of China as a place for foreign investment is going way down as companies around the world understand this. So I was just wondering if any of you have comments on the demographics of China and how that should affect our thinking. We'll just start from the left. Mr. Eshu, you want to give it a shot?
It's indisputable that is a meaningful trend. It's outside my area of expertise, but what I'd like to commend you for is the fact that so much of what we do with respect to adversary countries is in the near term. We need to be paying attention to long-term threats and their implications as well. Yeah. So I commend you for that.
Other comments on that?
Sure, I'll go ahead and comment, and I think your comments are right on. I do believe China is an existential threat to our leadership, but I don't think China is 10 foot tall. I think it's about 6'5", 6'6". And we need to keep that perspective as we're addressing it. And in many ways, Xi Jinping is the country's worst enemy because his policies are inferior to ours.
Gentleman's
Agreed.
time has expired.
Yield back.